Laura Harper woke up on a chilly Saturday morning, the kind of day that made her want to stay under the covers just a little longer. But life didn't stop for cozy beds, and neither did laundry. With a sigh, she rolled out of bed, slipped on her slippers, and shuffled toward the laundry room. She had been putting off washing clothes all week, and now the pile was threatening to take over the house. The laundry room was small, tucked away at the back of her modest home. It wasn't the most exciting part of her day, but it needed to be done. As she opened the door, she expected to see the usual mess of dirty socks, crumpled shirts, and towels waiting patiently in the basket. Instead, she froze. Her breath caught in her throat as her eyes adjusted to the dim light inside the room. There, curled up in her washing machine, were six tiny creatures. They looked like cubs, small, furry, and impossibly adorable. But they weren't any animal Laura had ever seen before. Their fur shimmered faintly, catching the weak glow from the overhead bulb. Long, delicate tails twitched in their sleep, and pointed ears flickered occasionally, as if reacting to some faraway sound only they could hear. Laura blinked once, twice, thinking maybe she was still half asleep or dreaming. But no, they were real. Six pairs of tiny bodies huddled together, breathing softly, completely unaware of her presence. For a moment she stood there, unsure what to do. Should she scream, call someone, wake them up? None of those options felt right. Instead, she found herself stepping closer, drawn to their strange beauty. Kneeling down, Laura peered into the washing machine. The cubs were no bigger than kittens, with soft, velvety fur that seemed to change color depending on how the light hit it. One of them had a patch of silver on its back, while another's tail glowed faintly gold. Their faces were peaceful, almost angelic, and Laura couldn't help but smile. Whatever these creatures were, they clearly trusted her enough to fall asleep in her laundry. Her mind raced with questions. Where had they come from? What were they doing here? And why, of all places, had they chosen her washing machine? Laura lived a simple life. She worked as a librarian, spent her weekends gardening, and rarely ventured beyond her quiet neighborhood. She didn't have time for mysteries or aliens, if that's what these things turned out to be. But despite her confusion, Laura couldn't bring herself to disturb them. They looked so vulnerable, so innocent. If she woke them up or tried to move them, who knew what might happen? Besides, her laundry could wait. These little beings obviously needed rest more than she needed clean clothes. Instead of panicking, Laura decided to observe. She grabbed a chair from the kitchen and sat quietly in the doorway, watching the cubs breathe. Every now and then, one of them would shift slightly, letting out a soft chirp or sigh. It was oddly soothing, like listening to the rustle of leaves in the wind. Laura felt her earlier stress melt away, replaced by a sense of calm she hadn't felt in weeks. As the minutes ticked by, Laura began to notice details she hadn't seen at first. Each cub had unique markings, patterns on their fur that looked almost like symbols. Some had stripes, others spots, and one even had what appeared to be tiny stars scattered across its back. Their tails, too, were different. One was bushy, another thin and whip-like, and a third ended in a tuft of fur that reminded Laura of a lion's mane. Despite their otherworldly appearance, the cubs seemed remarkably ordinary in their behavior. They cuddled together for warmth, just like puppies or kittens would. Occasionally, one of them would stretch lazily, yawn, and then settle back down. It was hard to believe they were anything but animals, yet something about them hinted at intelligence. Laura couldn't quite put her finger on it, but there was an aura of mystery surrounding them that kept her captivated. Time passed without her noticing. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting golden rays through the window. Eventually, hunger got the better of her, and Laura reluctantly left the laundry room to make breakfast. She moved quietly, careful not to wake the cubs, and fixed herself a bowl of cereal. Even as she ate, her thoughts kept drifting back to the strange visitors in her washing machine. What should she do next? Should she tell someone? Laura considered calling her neighbor, Rachel, who always had advice for everything. But what would Rachel say if she saw the cubs? Would she believe Laura or think she'd gone crazy? Maybe it was better to keep this to herself, for now at least. After finishing her meal, Laura returned to the laundry room. To her relief, the cubs were still asleep. She fetched a blanket from the hall closet and draped it gently over the washing machine, creating a makeshift tent to block out the light. Then she sat back down, content to watch and wait. Hours slipped by unnoticed. By mid-afternoon, the cubs finally began to stir. At first, it was just small movements, a twitch here, a stretch there. But soon, all 6 of them were awake, blinking groggily at their surroundings. When they noticed Laura sitting nearby, they tilted their heads curiously, studying her with wide, unblinking eyes. Laura smiled nervously. "Hi there," she said softly, unsure if they could understand her. To her surprise, one of the cubs let out a high-pitched chirp and waddled toward her. Encouraged, the others followed, tumbling clumsily over each other in their excitement. It was impossible not to laugh. Despite their alien appearance, the cubs acted just like playful pets. They sniffed at her hands, nuzzled against her legs, and even tried to climb onto her lap. Laura laughed again, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Whatever these creatures were, they clearly meant no harm. For the rest of the afternoon, Laura stayed with the cubs, playing with them and marveling at their antics. They explored every corner of the laundry room, investigating socks, shoes, and detergent bottles with childlike curiosity. One of them discovered a stray shoelace and spent 10 minutes batting it around like a toy. Another became fascinated by the dryer's spinning drum, watching it intently until Laura gently steered it away. By evening, exhaustion set in, not just for the cubs but for Laura as well. She realized she hadn't left the house all day, hadn't checked her phone, hadn't even thought about work or bills or anything else that usually weighed on her mind. For the first time in ages, she felt truly present, fully immersed in the moment. As the cubs settled down for another nap, Laura leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. Who were these creatures? Why had they come to her? And what was she supposed to do now? Questions swirled in her mind, but for once she didn't feel the need to find answers immediately. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain: her life would never be the same again. The next morning, Laura woke up feeling both excited and uneasy. The cubs were still asleep in her laundry room, curled up together like a bundle of soft, glowing fur. She had spent most of the previous day watching them, playing with them, and marveling at their strange yet endearing behavior. But now, as sunlight streamed through her bedroom window, reality began to creep back in. What was she supposed to do with 6 alien cubs, and where had they come from? After feeding herself a quick breakfast of toast and coffee, Laura decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. She needed fresh air and time to think. Maybe stepping away for a bit would help clear her head. As she strolled down the quiet streets, her mind buzzed with questions. Were these creatures lost? Did they have a family looking for them? Or had they simply wandered into her home by accident? Her thoughts were interrupted when she reached the park at the end of her street. There, sitting on a bench near the playground, was a man she didn't recognize. He was tall and lean, with dark hair and sharp features that made him look older than he probably was. His eyes scanned the area intently, as if searching for something or someone. Laura hesitated for a moment before continuing along the path. Something about him seemed out of place. As she passed by, the man suddenly spoke, his voice low and urgent. "You've got visitors," he said without looking directly at her. Laura stopped in her tracks, her heart skipping a beat. "Excuse me," she asked, turning to face him. The man finally looked up, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. "The ones in your house, they're not from here." Laura felt a chill run down her spine. "How do you know about them?" "My name is Daniel," he said, ignoring her question. "I've been tracking their kind for years. You need to be careful." "Tracking their kind," Laura repeated, her voice trembling slightly. "What are you talking about?" Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "They're called a peaceful species, but highly intelligent and very protective of their young. Those cubs in your laundry room belong to one of their families. If the mother finds out what's happened, it could mean trouble for you and for everyone else nearby." Laura's mind raced. This couldn't be real. Aliens. Mothers coming to retrieve their bobbies. It sounded like something out of a movie, not her ordinary life. Yet deep down, she knew Daniel wasn't lying. Everything he said matched what little she had observed about the Cubs, their intelligence, their mysterious glow, their undeniable otherworldliness. "But why are you telling me this?" Laura asked cautiously. "Why should I trust you?" Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Because I've seen what happens when people ignore warnings. Years ago, I was like you, just an ordinary person who stumbled across something extraordinary. Back then, I didn't listen to advice. I thought I could handle it on my own. It nearly cost me everything." His words sent a shiver down Laura's spine. "What happened?" "I don't have time to explain everything," Daniel said, glancing over his shoulder nervously. "Just promise me you'll keep them safe until dawn. After that, let them go. Don't try to keep them longer than necessary. Their mother will come looking soon, and you don't want to be caught in the middle." Laura swallowed hard, her throat dry. "And if I do?" Daniel's expression darkened. "Let's just say it won't end well for anyone involved." Before Laura could ask more questions, Daniel stood up and began walking away. "Wait," she called after him. "What am I supposed to do? How do I even let them go?" He paused briefly, looking back at her. "Follow your instincts. You'll know when the time comes." Then, without another word, he disappeared around the corner, leaving Laura standing alone in the park. Back at home, Laura found herself replaying the conversation over and over in her mind. Was Daniel telling the truth? Could she really trust him? Part of her wanted to dismiss the whole thing as nonsense, but the memory of his serious tone and haunted eyes lingered. He had seemed genuinely concerned, not just for her but for the safety of others. When she entered the laundry room, the cubs greeted her with chirps and playful nuzzles, as if nothing unusual was happening. Watching them tumble over each other and explore the basket of clothes, Laura struggled to reconcile their innocence with the danger Daniel had described. How could such sweet, harmless creatures be part of something so dangerous? She sat down on the floor beside them, her mind racing. If Daniel was right, she only had until dawn to figure things out. That gave her less than 24 hours to prepare. But how did you prepare for something like this? She had no idea where the cubs came from or how to send them back. All she knew was that she couldn't let anything bad happen to them, or to herself. For the rest of the afternoon, Laura focused on keeping the cubs safe and comfortable. She brought them water in a shallow bowl, though she wasn't sure if they drank it or not. She also cleared out some space in the living room so they could roam freely without getting into trouble. The cubs seemed delighted by the new environment, bounding across the carpet and sniffing at every piece of furniture. Despite their playful energy, Laura couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over her. Every sound outside made her jump, wondering if it was the mother Daniel had warned her about. What would she look like? Would she be angry? Would she hurt Laura if she thought her bobbies were in danger? To distract herself, Laura tried to learn more about the cubs. She noticed that each one had its own personality. One, whom she nicknamed Orion because of the star-shaped patch on his back, was bold and adventurous, always leading the group into new areas of the house. Another, Lyra, was quieter and preferred to stay close to Laura, often curling up in her lap. Cassiopeia was mischievous, stealing socks and hiding them under the couch, while Draco loved chasing shadows on the wall. Watching them interact, Laura realized how much joy they brought her. In just 2 days, they had become a part of her life in ways she never expected. The thought of letting them go filled her with sadness, but she knew it was the right thing to do. They didn't belong here, and keeping them would only put everyone at risk. As night fell, Laura dimmed the lights and curled up on the couch, surrounded by the cubs. They nestled against her, their soft purrs filling the room. For a while, she allowed herself to forget about the danger looming ahead. Instead, she focused on the warmth of their tiny bodies and the comfort of their presence. But sleep didn't come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, images of glowing mothers and shadowy figures haunted her dreams. She kept thinking about Daniel's warning and what might happen if she failed to protect the cubs. By morning, she would need a plan, a way to ensure their safe return. Until then, all she could do was stay vigilant and hope for the best. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Laura made a silent vow to herself. No matter what happened, she would do everything in her power to keep the cubs safe. Even if it meant facing something far beyond her understanding, she wouldn't back down. These little beings had already changed her life in ways she couldn't fully comprehend, and she owed it to them to see this through. With that resolve in mind, Laura drifted off to sleep, the rhythmic breathing of the cubs lulling her into a restless slumber. Tomorrow would bring challenges she couldn't predict, but for now she allowed herself a moment of peace. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready, or as ready as she could be. The morning sun filtered through the curtains as Laura Harper sat on her couch, staring at the 6 cubs curled up in a pile of blankets. They looked peaceful, their soft fur shimmering faintly in the light. Despite their adorable appearance, Laura couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her chest since her encounter with the stranger named Daniel. After meeting him at the park, she had hurried back home, her mind racing with questions. Who was he? How did he know about the cubs? And what did he mean when he said their mother would come looking for them? Laura wasn't used to dealing with mysteries like this. Her life was simple, working at the library, tending to her garden, and enjoying quiet weekends alone. Now, everything felt turned upside down. She decided to take another walk around the neighborhood, hopping to clear her thoughts. As she stepped outside, the cool breeze brushed against her face, carrying with it the scent of freshly cut grass. The streets were quiet, with only a few neighbors out walking their dogs or riding bikes. Laura walked slowly, her hands shoved into the pockets of her sweater, replaying Daniel's words in her head. "Keep them safe until dawn," he had said, "then let them go." But how was she supposed to do that? She didn't even know where they came from or how to send them back. Would their mother simply show up at her doorstep? What if she thought Laura had stolen her bobbies? A knot formed in her stomach as she imagined an angry alien appearing in her living room, ready to take revenge. Lost in thought, Laura wandered farther than usual, eventually reaching the edge of town where the houses gave way to open fields. She stopped near a small wooden fence and leaned against it, gazing at the horizon. The sky stretched endlessly above her, dotted with wisps of clouds. It was hard to believe that somewhere beyond those clouds, there might be entire worlds filled with creatures like the ones sleeping in her laundry room. As she stood there, a car pulled up beside her. It was an old sedan, its paint chipped and faded. The window rolled down, revealing Daniel sitting behind the wheel. His expression was serious, his eyes scanning the area before settling on her. "I didn't think you'd still be here," he said, his voice low. Laura crossed her arms over her chest. "I needed to think. You didn't exactly give me much to go on yesterday." Daniel nodded. "I know, I'm sorry, but there's not much time left. Have you noticed anything unusual today?" "No," Laura replied, shaking her head. "They're still just being cute, playing with socks, chasing shadows, nothing strange." "That won't last long," Daniel warned. "Their mother will sense their presence soon. When she arrives, things could get dangerous." Laura frowned. "Dangerous how?" "She won't understand your intentions," Daniel explained. "To her, you're a threat, a human who's taken her children. Even if you release them peacefully, she might not trust you." "But I haven't done anything wrong," Laura protested. "I found them in my washing machine. I've been taking care of them." "I believe you," Daniel said quickly. "But emotions run high in situations like this. Trust me, I've seen it before." Laura hesitated, unsure whether to ask more questions or argue. Instead, she sighed and rubbed her temples. "Okay, say I believe you. What am I supposed to do? How do I keep them safe until dawn?" Daniel leaned forward, resting his forearms on the steering wheel. "Stay calm. Don't panic. Keep them indoors and away from windows. If anyone asks, tell them nothing. No one can know they're here." "And then what?" Laura pressed. "How do I let them go?" "You'll know when the time comes," Daniel said cryptically. "Just follow your instincts, they'll guide you." Laura wanted to scream in frustration. Everything about this situation felt impossible. Instincts? How were instincts supposed to help her deal with aliens? Before she could respond, Daniel glanced at his mirror and stiffened. "I have to go," he muttered. "Be careful, Laura. Remember what I told you." With that, he drove off, leaving Laura standing alone by the fence. She watched the car disappear down the road, her heart pounding. For a moment, she considered running after him, demanding more answers. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't change anything. He had already told her all he could, or all he was willing to share. Reluctantly, Laura turned and began walking back home. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the responsibility now resting on her shoulders. She had never asked for any of this. All she had wanted was a normal weekend spent catching up on chores. Instead, she was caught in the middle of something far beyond her comprehension. When she returned, the cubs greeted her with chirps and playful leaps, completely unaware of the danger looming over them. Laura forced a smile, kneeling down to pet their soft heads. "Don't worry, little ones," she whispered. "I'll figure this out." For the rest of the day, Laura focused on keeping the cubs entertained and comfortable. She cleared out a corner of the living room, creating a makeshift play area with pillows and blankets. To her surprise, the cubs seemed content to stay there, exploring every nook and cranny while occasionally glancing up at her with wide, trusting eyes. Despite their cheerful demeanor, Laura couldn't ignore the growing tension inside her. Every creak of the floorboards or rustle of leaves outside made her jump. She kept the curtains drawn and avoided turning on lights, worried that someone, or something, might see the glow of the cub's fur. As evening approached, Laura prepared a simple dinner, though she barely touched it. Her appetite had vanished, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. She moved through the house quietly, checking locks and closing windows, determined to keep the cubs safe. By the time night fell, exhaustion had set in, but sleep felt impossible. Sitting on the couch, Laura wrapped herself in a blanket and stared at the cubs as they slept. Their gentle breathing was soothing, a reminder of the innocence they embodied. Yet, beneath that calm exterior, she knew chaos was waiting just beyond the horizon. Her mind drifted back to Daniel's warning. Was he right? Would the mother arrive soon? And if so, what would happen when she did? Laura tried to imagine the scene, a towering alien figure stepping into her living room, glowing with power and fury. The thought sent shivers down her spine. But there was also a part of her that refused to give in to fear. These cubs had brought unexpected joy into her life, filling her home with laughter and wonder. Whatever happened next, she was determined to protect them. She owed them that much. As the hours ticked by, Laura found herself drifting in and out of sleep. Each time she woke, she checked on the cubs, ensuring they were still safe. Outside, the world remained silent, the stars twinkling brightly in the clear night sky. For now, everything was calm. But Laura knew better than to let her guard down. Dawn was approaching, and with it, the unknown. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it head-on. She had promised herself and the cubs that she wouldn't back down, and she intended to keep that promise no matter what. With that thought in mind, Laura closed her eyes once more, clutching the edge of the blanket tightly. Sleep finally claimed her, but it was restless, filled with dreams of glowing figures and distant hums. Tomorrow would bring challenges she couldn't predict, but for now, she allowed herself a moment of peace. The house was quiet, save for the soft chirps and rustling sounds coming from the corner of the living room. Laura Harper sat cross-legged on the floor, watching the 6 cubs as they explored their makeshift play area. They had settled into her home with surprising ease, treating it like their own little kingdom. To them, everything was new and fascinating. The texture of the carpet, the shadows cast by the dim lamp, even the squeaky hinges on the closet door. Laura couldn't help but smile as she observed their antics. One cub, whom she had affectionately named Orion, was attempting to climb a stack of books she had left on the coffee table. His tiny claws scrabbled against the smooth covers, and he fell backward with a thud, landing squarely on his tail. Instead of crying, he let out an indignant chirp and tried again, this time succeeding in knocking the entire stack over. The other cubs gathered around, chittering excitedly, as if cheering him on. Another cub, Lyra, seemed more interested in Laura herself. She crawled into Laura's lap, nuzzling her hand until Laura began stroking her velvety fur. Lyra purred softly, her body vibrating with contentment. It was strange how quickly Laura had grown attached to these creatures. Just 2 days ago, she hadn't known they existed. Now, they felt like a part of her life, filling her home with warmth and energy she hadn't realized it was missing. As the hours passed, Laura found herself nomming all 6 of them. Orion, the bold explorer; Lyra, the gentle cuddler; Cassiopeia, the mischief maker who kept stealing socks and hiding them under the couch; Draco, the curious one who loved chasing shadows on the wall; Andromeda, the shyest of the group, who preferred to stay close to Laura rather than venture too far. Finally, there was Pegasus, whose golden-tipped tail glowed faintly, making him look like a tiny star come to life. Each name brought a sense of connection, as if giving them identities made them less alien and more like family. Laura whispered their names aloud, testing how they sounded. The cubs tilted their heads curiously, as if trying to understand what she was saying. Whether or not they recognized their names, they clearly enjoyed her attention. Whenever she spoke, they would perk up, their wide eyes fixed on her face. Despite the joy they brought, Laura couldn't ignore the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Daniel's warning echoed in her mind: keep them safe until dawn, then let them go. But letting them go felt impossible. How could she send them away when they trusted her so completely? What if something happened to them once they left her care? To distract herself, Laura decided to document their behavior. She grabbed a notebook from the kitchen counter and began jotting down observations. "Orion climbs," she wrote, smiling as he tumbled off the armrest of the couch for the 3rd time. "Cassiopeia hides objects. Lyra likes being held." Writing about them helped ground her, turning the surreal situation into something tangible. As the evening wore on, the cubs grew sleepy. One by one, they curled up together in a pile of blankets Laura had arranged for them. Their breathing slowed, and soon, all 6 were fast asleep. Laura watched them for a while, marveling at how peaceful they looked. In that moment, it was easy to forget the danger looming outside her door. But reality crept back in as darkness fell. Laura turned off most of the lights, leaving only a small lamp glowing in the corner. She pulled the curtains, ensuring no stray beams escaped to attract unwanted attention. Then she sat on the couch, clutching a blanket around her shoulders, and stared at the window. Every sound outside made her jump: the rustle of leaves, the distant bark of a dog, the hum of a passing car. Her imagination conjured images of glowing figures stepping out of the shadows, searching for their missing children. Would the mother arrive tonight, or would she wait until morning? Laura didn't know, and that uncertainty gnawed at her. To calm her nerves, she focused on the cubs. Even in sleep, they radiated a kind of magic. Their fur shimmered faintly, casting soft glows across the room. Laura noticed patterns etched into their coats, symbols that seemed almost deliberate, like constellations mapped onto their bodies. She reached out tentatively, tracing a finger along one of the markings on Orion's back. It felt warm to the touch, pulsing gently, as if alive. A sudden noise startled her, a low, melodic hum that filled the air. For a moment, Laura thought it was coming from outside. But when she glanced at the cubs, she realized the sound was emanating from them. Each cub emitted a different tone, blending together into a harmonious song. It was beautiful, haunting, and utterly alien. Laura listened intently, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't just animals. They were intelligent, sentient beings, capable of creating music that transcended language. The humming lasted only a few minutes before fading into silence. When it ended, Laura felt lighter, as if the sound had carried away some of her fear and replaced it with hope. She leaned back against the couch, closing her eyes for a moment. Sleep tugged at her, but she resisted, knowing she needed to stay alert. Instead, she picked up the notebook again and continued writing. This time, she focused on her feelings, how the cubs had changed her perspective in such a short time. Before they arrived, her life had been predictable routine. She worked at the library, tended to her garden, and spent weekends alone, content but unchallenged. Now her world had expanded beyond anything she could have imagined. These tiny beings had shown her wonder, curiosity, and courage she didn't know she possessed. Her thoughts drifted to Daniel. Who was he, really? Why had he chosen to warn her? Laura couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story than he had revealed. Had he truly encountered the before? If so, what had happened to him? She wished she could ask him, but she doubted she'd see him again. He had disappeared as quickly as he had appeared, leaving her to navigate this strange situation on her own. By midnight, exhaustion began to take its toll. Laura's eyelids drooped and her head nodded forward. She fought to stay awake, reminding herself of the importance of vigilance. But the cubs, steady breathing and the comforting hum of their earlier song lulled her into a state of calm. Eventually, she gave in, curling up on the couch with the blanket wrapped tightly around her. Her dreams were vivid and surreal. She saw vast landscapes dotted with glowing trees, rivers of liquid light flowing through valleys, and skies filled with swirling colors. In the distance, a towering figure stood silhouetted against the horizon. Its form shifted and shimmered, neither fully solid nor fully ethereal. Laura wanted to approach it, but something held her back, an instinctive fear mixed with awe. When she woke, the first rays of sunlight were streaming through the cracks in the curtains. For a moment, she forgot where she was and why she felt so tired. Then she heard the familiar chirps of the cubs and remembered everything. Sitting up, she stretched her arms and glanced at the corner of the room. The cubs were awake, playing quietly among the blankets. They seemed oblivious to the significance of the day ahead. Laura swallowed hard, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she would soon have to say goodbye. She didn't know how she would do it, or if she could, but she knew it had to happen. Keeping them any longer would only put them in danger. For now, though, she pushed those thoughts aside. There was still time before dawn turned into full daylight. She decided to make the most of it, spending every remaining moment with the cubs. She fetched snacks from the kitchen, offering pieces of fruit and cheese to see if they liked human food. Most of them ignored the offerings, but Pegasus nibbled cautiously at a slice of apple, his golden tail wagging in approval. Laura laughed softly, feeling a pang of sadness beneath the joy. These moments were fleeting, and she knew she would treasure them forever. No matter what happened next, the cubs had already changed her life in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. They had reminded her of the beauty in the unknown, the importance of trust, and the power of connection, even across worlds. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Laura prepared herself mentally for what lay ahead. She didn't know how the mother would find them or what she would look like. All she knew was that she had promised to keep the cubs safe and to let them go when the time came. Whatever happened, she would face it with courage. For now, she simply watched them play, committing every detail to memory. The way Orion leapt onto the couch like a conquering hero. The way Lyra nestled against her side, purring softly. The way Cassiopeia dragged a sock across the floor, proudly presenting it to Laura as if it were a trophy. These were the moments she would carry with her long after the cubs were gone. And when the time finally came, she told herself she would be ready. The morning light grew brighter as Laura Harper sat on the couch, her eyes fixed on the 6 cubs playing in the corner of the living room. She had spent the early hours watching them, laughing at their antics and memorizing every detail about them. But now, with the sun fully risen, a deep sense of unease settled over her. Dawn had arrived, and with it, the promise of change. Laura glanced at the clock on the wall. It was almost 8 o'clock. Every tick of the second hand felt heavier than the last, pulling her closer to the moment she had been dreading. She didn't know how or when the mother would come, but she could feel it in the air, a tension that hadn't been there before. The house seemed quieter, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Suddenly, a low hum filled the room. It wasn't loud, but it vibrated through everything, the floorboards, the furniture, even Laura's chest. The sound was unfamiliar yet strangely beautiful, like a melody played on an instrument from another world. The cubs stopped what they were doing and perked up instantly, their ears twitching and tails standing straight. They chirped excitedly, looking toward the window with wide, unblinking eyes. Laura stood up slowly, her heart pounding. She moved to the window and pulled back the curtain just enough to peek outside. At first, she saw nothing unusual. The street was empty, the houses quiet. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she caught a flicker of movement. Turning her head, she gasped. Standing near the edge of her yard was a figure unlike anything Laura had ever seen. It was tall and slender, its body covered in shimmering scales that shifted colors with every step. Its limbs were long and graceful, ending in delicate hands with fingers that glowed faintly. Its face was smooth and angular, with large, multifaceted eyes that seemed to see everything at once. A crown-like structure adorned its head, pulsing softly with light. The mother. Laura froze, her breath catching in her throat. The creature tilted its head slightly, studying the house with an intensity that made Laura feel both small and exposed. She dropped the curtain quickly and stepped away from the window, her mind racing. What should she do? Should she go outside? Stay hidden? Call out to the cubs? Before she could decide, the front door rattled faintly as if something or someone was testing it. Laura's pulse quickened. She hurried to the cubs, kneeling beside them. "It's okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if they understood her. "Your mom is here." The cubs chirped in response, their excitement growing. One by one, they began trotting toward the door, their tiny bodies glowing brighter with each step. Laura followed behind them, her heart in her throat. She unlocked the door and opened it slowly, stepping aside to let them pass. The mother stood just beyond the threshold, her presence radiating power and calm. She didn't move as the cubs ran to her, nuzzling against her legs and chirping happily. Laura watched from the doorway, unsure whether to approach or stay back. The mother lowered herself slightly, extending one glowing limb toward the cubs. Her movements were slow and deliberate, exuding patience and care. When all 6 cubs were gathered around her, the mother turned her gaze toward Laura. For a moment, neither of them moved. Laura felt pinned under the weight of those multifaceted eyes, which seemed to look straight into her soul. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet the mother's gaze. I didn't mean to keep them," Laura stammered, her voice trembling. "I found them in my washing machine. I didn't know where they came from. I just wanted to keep them safe." The mother didn't respond verbally, but Laura sensed understanding in her expression. There was no anger, no hostility, only a quiet authority that demanded respect. The mother raised her hand again, this time toward Laura. From her palm emerged a golden orb, hovering gently in the air between them. Laura stared at the orb, unsure what to do. It pulsed softly, casting a warm glow that filled the space around them. After a moment, the mother nudged it closer to Laura, who hesitated before reaching out to touch it. The orb was cool to the touch, its surface smooth and seamless. As soon as her fingers brushed against it, images flooded her mind. Scenes of distant planets, glowing forests, and skies filled with swirling colors. She saw the cubs playing among these landscapes, happy and free. Tears welled up in Laura's eyes as she realized what the orb represented: gratitude. The mother wasn't angry. She understood that Laura had cared for her children, keeping them safe until she could retrieve them. The orb was a gift, a token of thanks. When the vision faded, Laura looked up to find the mother already turning away. The cubs followed closely behind her, their tiny forms glowing brighter as they moved. Within moments, the group reached the edge of the yard, where the air seemed to shimmer like heat waves rising from pavement. Without hesitation, the mother stepped forward, disappearing into the shimmer along with the cubs. Laura rushed outside, calling after them, but they were gone. The yard was empty, the air still. Only the golden orb remained, floating silently in front of her. She reached out and took it in her hands, feeling its weightlessness and warmth. It was real proof that everything she had experienced was true. For a long time, Laura stood there staring at the spot where the mother and cubs had vanished. Her heart ached with loss but also with gratitude. She had been given a rare gift, a glimpse into a world far beyond her own. And though the cubs were gone, their presence lingered in her memory, filling her with wonder and purpose. Eventually, she went back inside, closing the door behind her. The house felt emptier now, quieter. But instead of sadness, Laura felt a strange sense of peace. She placed the orb on the kitchen counter where it continued to glow softly. Then she sank onto the couch, wrapping herself in a blanket. Her thoughts drifted to Daniel. Would he come back to check on her? Would he want to know what had happened? Laura wasn't sure, but she hoped he would return someday. Maybe then she could thank him for his warning, for helping her prepare for this moment. As the day wore on, Laura began tidying up the house. She folded the blankets the cubs had slept in, picked up the scattered socks Cassiopeia had hidden, and straightened the books Orion had knocked over. Each task brought a bittersweet smile to her face. These little reminders of the cubs would stay with her forever, woven into the fabric of her home. By evening, Laura decided to take a walk. She needed fresh air, time to process everything that had happened. As she strolled through the neighborhood, she noticed things she hadn't paid attention to before. The way the sunlight filtered through the trees, the patterns of clouds drifting across the sky, the distant hum of crickets. Everything felt more vivid, more alive. When she returned home, the golden orb was still glowing on the counter. Laura sat at the kitchen table, staring at it for a long time. She didn't know what it meant or why the mother had given it to her. But she knew one thing for certain: her life had changed forever. The cubs had shown her a new way of seeing the world, not just as a librarian or a gardener, but as someone capable of wonder and connection. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready to embrace it, because now she understood that even in the most ordinary moments, magic could be found. And sometimes, all it took was 6 unexpected visitors to remind you of that truth. With a deep breath, Laura stood up and turned off the lights. She carried the orb to her bedroom, placing it on her nightstand. As she climbed into bed, she gazed at its gentle glow, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions. But for now, she allowed herself to rest, knowing she had done the right thing. And as sleep claimed her, Laura smiled, thinking of the cubs and the mother who had trusted her to care for them, even if only for a short time. Days turned into weeks, and life slowly returned to its usual rhythm for Laura Harper. The laundry room was no longer a sanctuary for glowing cubs, and the quiet hum of their playful chirps had faded into memory. Yet, something inside her had shifted. The encounter with the 6 cubs and their mother had left an indelible mark on her heart, changing the way she saw the world and herself. The golden orb remained on her kitchen counter, pulsing softly with light. It didn't do anything extraordinary. It didn't speak or move or reveal hidden secrets. But its presence was comforting, a reminder of the brief yet profound connection she'd shared with beings from another world. Laura often found herself staring at it, wondering about the vast universe they called home. Were they watching her now? Did they think of her as she thought of them? At first, Laura tried to go back to her normal routine. She returned to work at the library, tended to her garden, and spent weekends catching up on chores. But something felt different. The mundane tasks that once filled her days now seemed hollow, lacking the spark of wonder she had experienced during those unforgettable days with the cubs. She missed their curiosity, their playfulness, the way they had transformed her ordinary house into a place of magic. One evening, as she sat on the couch flipping through channels, Laura realized she couldn't ignore the longing any longer. Her encounter with the had awakened something within her, a thirst for knowledge, a desire to understand the mysteries of the universe. She decided then and there that she wouldn't let the experience slip away unnoticed. Instead, she would use it as a catalyst to explore new horizons. The next morning, Laura visited the local bookstore and bought several books about astronomy, astrophysics, and extraterrestrial life. She had never been particularly interested in science before, but now, every page felt like a step closer to understanding the world beyond Earth. She learned about distant galaxies, black holes, and the possibility of intelligent life existing elsewhere in the cosmos. Each discovery filled her with awe and excitement, reigniting a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Her newfound passion didn't stop at reading. Laura began attending lectures and workshops hosted by scientists and researchers in nearby cities. She joined online forums where people discussed theories about alien civilizations and shared stories of unexplained phenomena. At first, she hesitated to share her own experience, worried others might dismiss her as crazy. But eventually, she found the courage to write about the cubs and their mother, describing everything in simple, honest terms. To her surprise, many responded with kindness and curiosity, encouraging her to keep exploring. As months passed, Laura's life became richer and more fulfilling than ever before. She started volunteering at a planetarium, helping organize events and presentations for children. Watching their faces light up as they gazed at projections of stars and planets reminded her of the cubs' wide-eyed wonder when they explored her living room. In those moments, she felt connected not only to the children, but also to the universe itself. One night while stargazing in her backyard, Laura noticed a faint glow on the horizon. At first, she thought it was the moon rising, but as she squinted, she realized it wasn't coming from the sky. It was emanating from the golden orb sitting on her kitchen counter. Curious, she went inside and picked it up, holding it close to examine it. The orb pulsed gently, its light growing brighter and warmer. Laura felt a strange sensation, as if the orb were alive, communicating with her in some way she couldn't fully comprehend. Images flashed in her mind, stars swirling, rivers of light flowing across alien landscapes, and silhouettes of creatures moving gracefully among them. She saw the cubs playing in fields of glowing grass, their tails shimmering like tiny comets. And in the distance, she glimpsed the mother, her scales reflecting the colors of 1,000 suns. Tears streamed down Laura's face as she realized what the orb was showing her: reassurance. They were safe, happy, and thriving. They hadn't forgotten her. Somehow, they were reaching out, letting her know that their bond remained intact, even across unimaginable distances. When the vision faded, the orb dimmed, returning to its soft, steady glow. Laura placed it back on the counter, her chest swelling with gratitude. She didn't need words to understand the message. They had trusted her, and now they were thanking her once again for caring, for protecting, for believing. From that night on, Laura embraced her role as a bridge between worlds. Though she knew she might never see them again, she carried their story with her wherever she went. She began speaking publicly about her experience, sharing it with anyone who would listen. Some people were skeptical, dismissing her tale as fiction or fantasy. But many others were inspired, finding hope and wonder in her words. Laura's talks led to invitations to conferences and podcasts, where she spoke alongside scientists, authors, and enthusiasts passionate about space exploration. She became part of a community dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of the universe, using her story to remind others of the importance of curiosity and compassion. "We may never fully understand what lies beyond our world," she often said, "but that doesn't mean we should stop trying. Every question we ask brings us closer to the truth." Despite her growing fame, Laura remained humble and grounded. She continued working at the library, tending to her garden and spending quiet nights under the stars. But now, those moments felt deeper, richer, infused with meaning. She no longer saw herself as just a librarian or a gardener. She was an explorer, a storyteller, a dreamer. On clear nights, Laura would sit outside with the golden orb resting beside her, gazing at the constellations above. Sometimes she swore she could hear faint chirps echoing in the distance, carried by the wind. Whether real or imagined, they reminded her of the cubs, their laughter, their trust, their boundless curiosity. They reminded her that even the smallest moments could hold the greatest significance. Years later, when asked what had changed her life most profoundly, Laura always gave the same answer: 6 little visitors who taught me to look beyond the ordinary. Those visitors had shown her that magic existed, not in spells or fairy tales, but in the connections we make, the questions we ask, and the wonders we choose to believe in. And so, Laura Harper lived her life with open eyes and an open heart, forever grateful for the gift of 6 glowing cubs who had wandered into her washing machine one quiet Saturday morning. Though they were gone, their legacy remained, guiding her toward a future filled with endless possibilities, and reminding her that sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin in the most unexpected places.